And welcome back. This is Suike Novus, finally back for after what seems to be a very long break, doing a new LP. And with this new LP, I'm pretty sure some questions are raised. Number one, wasn't I just doing an LP of Mega Man X6? Of course I was. However, I decided to quit doing that because, well, everyone's already done it. There's not really a reason for me to redo an LP of Mega Man X6. I should probably do a review of it, only because I'm one of the very few people who's a fan of Mega Man who doesn't necessarily hate the game. But anyway, so I decided to change what I was going to do. And number one, if you haven't already noticed, this is Hyperdimension Neptunia. It's actually a JRPG, which coincides with what I'm talking about. I'm actually switching over and doing LPs of JRPGs. The reason why I'm doing LPs of JRPGs is because they don't really get a lot of, let's see, what's the best word for it? Coverage is not the best word, but it's what I'm going to use right now. Because, well, a lot of people don't like the grinding aspect and they don't really like to work for their games. And that's essentially what JRPGs are. You work for your game. But I'll get more back to that in a bit. Let's talk a little bit about the game. This is Hyperdimension Neptunia. It's a very interesting game based around the console wars, and it's pretty much a parody game. Um, there are essentially in this game there are four different lands that are ruled over by four different goddesses. The four different lands are Neptune, Lost Station, Lean Box, and Laui. Obviously, you should be able to tell which consoles those represent. They're all ruled over by four different goddesses: Purple Heart, Green Heart, White Heart, and Black Heart. Purple Heart rules over Planet Neptune, Green Heart rules over Lean Box, White Heart rules over Laui, and Black Heart rules over Lost Station. So you see a lot of the different consoles that they're supposed to be representing into these characters. It's a really interesting game. I do kind of like it. I'm going to go over things I don't like about the game later, but it's a parody game, and the game doesn't take itself seriously, which is actually quite interesting. I really like it. Um, so I'm going to be doing an LP of it, and as you can see right here, the four different goddesses of the four different places are fighting between each other, trying to rule over everyone. And it kind of reminds me of what the console wars were. Everyone was trying to get everyone's market share so that they would sell the best, I guess. I don't really see a reason why you shouldn't be happy with who we've got unless you have a really low fan base. But these three consoles don't have a low fan base. Anyway, so as you can see here, within the game, the four goddesses are fighting because, well, that's what they were told to do. They were told to fight. So the reason why they fight and everything like that comes up as over the course of the story. But for right now, I'm not going to talk about it because spoilers. So there's a couple things about this game. As you can see, Green Heart here is pretty much fan service right now. But um, the game, number one, if you're into that, there's not a single male sprite in this series until the second game. Literally, the only males that you see are all silhouettes. So if you're into that, this might be the game for you. Um, this game is also an JRPG, which does involve grinding, which, yes, is everyone's favorite thing, grinding. But it's not really grinding for levels. When you open up most dungeons with a little bit of strategy and a little bit of work, you don't necessarily have to grind anything out. You can pretty much figure it out on your own as long as you're smart enough. But anyway, um, the thing that's grindy about this game is you'll grind dungeons. And you don't necessarily have to grind dungeons, but I'll go more over that and when I get to that point. Um, but anyway, what's about to happen is the three goddesses here are about to gang up on Neptune. The reason why they want to get rid of Neptune is because she's technically the strongest. And it's kind of sort of the reverse situation of what was going on in the console wars, because number one, we didn't exist at the point in time when the Sega Dreamcast went out, killed the Sega system. But that's just essentially video game logic. We need to get rid of Neptune. She needs to be in a vulnerable state. So here we're going to get our first glimpse of battles in this game. You also get to see all four of the goddesses in their goddess forms, which is, well, their CPU forms, which is, it's very interesting and they're very powerful. It gets nerfed in the next game, but here you get to stay powerful as long as you pretty much want to. These attacks you won't see for a very, very long time. They are the specialty attacks of each character except for Neptune. You're not going to see Neptune's specialty attack because she doesn't do anything. So whatever. But Neptune actually has two, and she's the main character of this game. We'll go more into Neptune's character later, but this doesn't really show how... This shows how battles are. They are turn-based, but it doesn't show how battles feel. You get to how battles feel when I get to the battle, which JRPGs normally do have a pretty long introduction. So anyway, all the goddesses are ganging up on Neptune right now. She attacks one of them. Whiteheart gets her last hit in, and then Neptune falls out of the sky. Essentially, she falls out of Celestia, which is where all the goddesses live. When they are trying to rule over, when they are ruling over the lands. So, anyway, that's that. There's not too much to talk about at this point in time about the game's story. So I'll go ahead and talk about the changes in the system of my channel. I'm changing my channel from the random, I'll do LPs of whatever I'm going to do LPs of, if I feel like it, to more of a JRPG LP channel. Main reason why is because, number one, JRPGs don't get a lot of coverage. A lot of people don't necessarily like JRPGs, and the reason why is because of grinding or stories, or they feel it's silly. I don't necessarily know. A lot of casual gamers don't like JRPGs, and I kind of feel like the genre is underexposed, and it could do with a lot more people getting into it, because JRPGs are really fun, really nice, and if you're really willing to put in the work, they can be quite satisfying. But that's the reason why I switched over to doing JRPGs. You're going to see me do a lot of JRPGs. No, but not... Well, I might do Final Fantasy 13, but I really doubt it for reasons I'm going to explain in a minute. Right now, Neptune is blacked out. She doesn't necessarily know where she is, and she's waiting to be contacted. And this is another one of those parody of JRPGs moments right here, because she's like, what am I waiting for, breaking the fourth wall? Because a lot of them make you wait to get contacted by the person who's going to tell you what to do. She's contacted by Hyperdimension, who's trying to ask Neptune to unseal her. Hyperdimension is one of the creators. Well, Hyperdimension is... Yeah, oh well, spoilers. Hyperdimension is one of the creators of the four goddesses in this other thing. She says the statement multiple times. She is the land, and the land is she. She's the tome, she's the book, literally, that everything in the world comes from. So essentially she sort of has powers above the goddesses, but she doesn't have access to those powers. The goddesses themselves are the ones who access the powers. So don't worry about that. This is another first glimpse. This is a first glimpse also into Neptune's personality, and Neptune's kind of silly. She's silly serious. She's trying to be serious, but she ends up feeling silly most of the times. And if you read most of this text, it's actually hilarious. If you're also watching my video, you'll notice whenever I take a break that when you hear them, you're hearing them in Japanese. And the reason why is because, well, number one, while I don't fully understand all Japanese, I understand more Japanese than I understand Spanish. And I took 3 years of that in high school. It feels less awkward to me watching this in Japanese than it does watching it in English. Translation errors and things like that, and pretty much I just feel much better. And I'll show an example of what I mean later on down the line in most likely another video. But anyway, this is our first introduction to our second party member, and I'm being all over the place, but there's a lot to explain in a small period of time. This is Kampa. Kampa is a nurse in training who lives on planet Neptune, and she wants to be a nurse because her grandfather taught her to always help people. She is a very interesting character. She's probably the second/third ditziest character in the game. Second if you don't have DLC, third if you do have DLC. Well, actually, she might be the first, because she might actually beat Neptune in ditziness. But it's interesting. I like her design. I like her character. And she tries to be grown up, and she sometimes actually succeeds at being like a motherly type figure, but that's just how Kampa is. You like her, you learn to like her, you like her design. I mean, I love the outfit that they have her in, as well as Neptune's. There's not very many outfits I do not like in this game. So, yeah, still, different tangent. Anyway, Neptune has fallen out of the sky. She landed on planet Neptune, where she ended up sticking out of the ground with her head stuck in the ground and her legs pointing straight up, so she looked like a spear. Kappa actually states. So it's actually a humorous situation. But what Kappa is noticing here is that Neptune, number one, doesn't remember where she is or who she is, and number two, she's kind of all beat up, and that's because she just got getting beat up by all the other goddesses. So what she does is she tries to bandage up Neptune, and this is your, if you don't count Greenheart's outfit, first introduction into fan service in this game, and it's actually probably the only really. This is probably the worst or best, depending on how you look at it, sign of fan service. You see, all Neptune's pretty much wearing is bandages because Comp is trying to bandage her up. Yeah, there's not really anything else I can say about that. The main purpose of this game and the big part of this game is going to be events and things like that. That's where a lot of the fun is had, the story and the events. The dungeons and the battles aren't really all that fun, only because the game with those things makes it feel unpolished, like it wasn't completed when it was released. So it makes the game is quite dull and boring whenever you're dealing with battles. And this, if you want to break into JRPGs, this is not the first JRPG for you. There's better JRPGs to jump into, and most of them I would recommend are on the PS2. But anyway, the events and everything like that are actually really nice. I do like the voice acting, even though some of Neptune's in battle voice acting isn't my favorite, and you might get to hear it sometimes, you may not, but that's just different thoughts and things like that that I'll try to sneak in. But while I have time, like, because I actually have time right now because I've already told you everything that they're talking about. So it's a lot of pretty much filler text, conversation, things like that, that they're just trying to move the story along. Neptune realized that someone was calling out to her for help in her dream, and it was actually his form. And this is actually the main quest of the story. So she's trying to figure out what she wants to do, but she's finding out that there's monsters all over the land that she landed in, and she figures out that someone must be generating all these, and she wants to help people because that's just how she is. That's just the way that she is. She's the typical heroine-ish type, and it may actually be a little bit of her goddess feel that she had before, but she can't necessarily remember at this point in time. So she essentially convinces Neptune that she needs to. Neptune convinces Kampa that she needs to help her out, but Kampa really doesn't have anything to do at this point in time because monsters have been eating people and this school's been closed. So this just pretty much adds to Neptune's wanting to drag Kampa around to try to stop whatever's eating people effectively. And we get deeper and deeper into the story as it goes on, but this is going to bring us up to our first instance of a dungeon. Now, this is my fourth time playing through this game, so you're not going to see me go through the first dungeon because I actually already have the item, and due to the fact that I have the item for it, it automatically skips it. Also, due to the fact that this is not my first time going through this game, I have all the things that I really need to succeed all the way through the end of the game. I can actually fight the final boss right now if it gave me the option. So I'm going ahead and decking my character out for what's going to be the rest of the game. The battle system to this game, I actually really like the battle system. Well, I have to explain that. It's a little difficult. Essentially, with the combo system, you actually customize what each move of the combo does. It's a 4-combo system, and the first hit you don't get to determine, but it determines your type. You can actually do a physical combo or a special/magical combo, however you want to put it, even though all those pretty much involve guns. The combo system is quite nice because you get to decide what your character is going to do. You get to build your own combo. This is completely different from a game that came out relatively around the same time called Trinity Universe, where you had to memorize the combinations for every single character, and some of those combinations got quite long. So you're trying to remember 9 different characters, 8-hit combos. Yeah, that's 72 different button presses. And it only gets worse from there. And if you're trying to combo into other people's things, it's just really complicated, and I just like the way that this game did it a lot better than the other game. As you can see here, I'm actually customizing Compa, and I don't really customize Compa out to her full specs because I could give her a better armor piece, but I don't use Compa that much because I don't really need to. Here we are at the main scene, main screen, and when you're going through this game, you're pretty much going to go through 3 things on a semi-decent regular basis. Shop, where you can come in and you buy shops. Sometimes they will stock items, so I would check this back regularly. You have Explore, where you can see all your events, and that's what sets you up to open up your dungeons, and it's also where you would move the lands around if you're trying to go from different lands, but right now I can't do that. And Search, which is where you go through your dungeons and how you actually get to your events that you're going through the game. Now, here you see that I've already gotten the item. That's because that's the way the game actually is running it, because I already have this item because this is a new game plus. This is my 4th time going through this game. But, sorry, I'm starting to catch out and run out of breath. But it takes me to the 2nd dungeon, and we're going to go ahead and get our first look at how dungeons are in this game. While we're waiting for it to load. This is a dungeon. It's actually quite pretty. The downside to this game is you will spend a lot of time in dungeons, and you'll spend a lot of time in battle, and it makes the game feel very, very stale. But anyway, I'll come back to that in a second. We're about to meet our 3rd party member. The 2nd dungeon in the game is where you meet your 3rd party member, and for some strange reason, for whatever reason it was, I don't remember meeting my 1st party member until I went to my 2nd land for some strange reason. Anyway, the party member we're about to run into is IF. IF is a guild member, and that's all I'm going to tell you right now. I can explain what the guild is, but it would give away a little bit of the story, which isn't really... It doesn't really tie into the main story that much, but I kind of want to leave it alone for right now because, spoilers, it does have a lot to do with the story of a different land that we're going to run into later. IF is another physical user. She's relatively pretty fast, but IF is... She's the cynical character that pretty much keeps the group grounded. She's almost like the de facto leader, even though the leader is pretty much Neptune. IF is here on planet Neptune. She was hunting monsters because that's what she does as part of her job. And you get to see a little bit more about how the guild works. You see a little bit of it in this game, but you see a little bit more about it in Mark 2, which is the 2nd game in the series. But here is the downside to this game, and it actually points a little bit to why I did not like DLC when it first came out. This game, right, what you see right now, these 3 members, for the majority of the game, if you do not get any DLC, these 3 members are the only 3 members that you're going to have, unless you do extras at the very end, unless you buy the DLC. Now, that wouldn't be necessarily so bad, except for the game. Being able to switch out does help you in some cases, but all it pretty much does is extend your combo. The reason why I say this is so bad is because you actually recruit 2 other members in the game, Gust and Nisa, and I'm going to go ahead and mention them. The 2 characters you recruit, if you want the goddesses later in the end of the game, you kind of want you kind of want at least Nisa, because Nisa does help out with that a lot. But the downside to it is the fact that they are added in as DLC. It kind of says to me, it kind of, okay, when development teams create a game and they come up with all the things, and if they have content they want to add in, but it's not necessarily complete yet, then I would say release it as a patch later and just go ahead and add it in because it was planned for it. Customers are going to buy your game. But, and I'll put that thought on hold so I can talk about the combat system. Here's the combat system. You're going to see a lot of this because, yeah, that's pretty much what most of the game is. Now right here, I've already killed him with the first strike, but I'm going to go ahead and show you Neptune's special attack. You didn't get to see it when she was fighting the goddesses, but she does have two special attacks. One of them you can only show in her processor form. I can't show you that one right now because, well, I'm not in Neptune's processor form, and I'm not going to be in her processor form for the rest of this video, I don't think. But anyway, this is probably one of the very few times that you will see this. You might see it a second time in a boss fight, so you can see the extended version of it. But the reason why you're going to see this very few times is because I'm going to skip it because it's quite long and there's not really a point in showing it every single time that it happens. And one thing I like about this game is it does allow you to skip attacks. But going back to what I was talking about before with DLC, this game does something that I don't quite like when it comes back to the way that it added recruited members. If a company adds in DLC, if they have a planned content and they don't finish it in time or whatever, then okay, add it in as a patch. If the development team comes back together to add more content to the game, then yes, I'm perfectly fine with paying a little bit extra to get that content because the development team got back together. However, if the development team creates content and specifically holds it back to maybe make a little bit more money on the backside, it's kind of sort of abusive to your fan base, especially when what you're trying to do is you're trying to create a series so that people will come back and constantly buy your game, and you create a fan base and they're loyal to you over and over and over again, which is essentially what the JRPG fan base is a little bit like. But or any video game franchise should be their sort of goal, is to create a fan base that will come back and buy their games because they offer quality and it's something that they actually like to do. But in this particular case, two characters that join your party, you can't access unless you buy DLC for them. And I really don't agree with it because it makes it seem like they planned to do this, and it's really abusive to people by the game. And thankfully, they don't do this in the next game. But anyway, they're talking about Basilicums, and they're going to a Basilicom, and I'm coming back into the story, and I'm scattered, but there's a lot that I have to cover in a small amount of time. A Basilicom is effectively, it's like the church and the government building all in one. As I said before, each individual land has a goddess. The goddess effectively rules over their people and protects them from monsters and whatever. The Basilicom serves the goddess. They help out the goddess on the political side, and they have a place for the goddess to stay whenever she's down in her land. Now, since these lands creation, since they have not seen their goddesses yet, this is actually the first goddess. Well, no, let me not spoil more of the story. I want to, but I shouldn't. The Basilicom they help administrate the land based on what the goddess tells them, and they effectively help them back out. It's a give and take, a place for them to stay, as well as they help them out, and the goddess is also the strongest person in the area, so that's effectively how it works. The downside to Planet Neptune is Planet Neptune has been missing its goddess. Compo actually mentioned this, and that's the reason why Planet Neptune's monsters is more overridden with monsters than any of the other lands. The other lands actually have their goddesses. So this is actually a big point in the game, but I can go ahead and tell you, because you probably already figured it out, that Neptune is Purple Heart. So that means she's the goddess of the planet Neptune, but she does not remember that. And for some strange reason, it's a big revelation at the end of the game, but like every player of the game already knows that she is Neptune, because she transforms into Purple Heart. And you get that transformation relatively quickly. In this game, I don't think in this video that you see me transform into Neptune. You might see me do it in the next video. I'm not necessarily sure, but that's not a big deal. But anyway, you have to do this so that you get the option to travel to different lands. It's important to travel to different lands because you can't finish the game without traveling to different lands. That's just the way it is. Right now, you're trying to gather the 4 key fragments so that you can unlock the place where Histoire is staying or is locked up. And that way you can continue on with the story and try to figure out who locked Histoire, why did they lock them up, and why do we need to save Histoire at this point in time. I didn't stop. It's just, there's not really anything to say right there. So here, we're actually about to go back into another dungeon to help take out a sandworm. And we're coming up on the end of this video, so I'll try not to go on too long of a tangent here. So effectively, what they're trying to do is, Neptune wants to wipe out all the monsters so that people aren't in trouble, even though she needs to collect key fragments to unlock his drawer. IF is sort of cynical, and she's trying to push the party along so they can get done what they want to get done so that she can leave them alone. IF's kind of that kind of person, but you learn to like IF. She's actually one of the faster characters, so 9 times out of 10, if you're playing this game for the first time, she's going to be the fastest character. But on your 4th time, Neptune most likely is going to be your fastest character because recruiting the goddesses, you have to do a one-on-one battle with Neptune with them. By the way, this is way on down the line, so you end up being quite a bit stronger than the rest of your team. As I said, this game does get really stale really quickly because all you do is pretty much run through dungeons. Scene event, run through dungeons. Scene event, run through dungeons. So, as a part of this, and I'm going to go ahead and say this now, this is not a 100% LP. I've gotten 100% of this game. As a matter of fact, I will show you my trophies next time to prove that I've platinumed this game. The downside to this game is it gets really stale really quickly, and I don't want to show every bit of grinding that it takes in the game to, which the only grinding part is still getting the goddesses. That's involved in this game. I just don't want to do that. It would be boring and it would be terrible. So, as a new game plus LP, what I'm doing is I'm showing any notable events that I particularly liked and stories, that story information, which means I'll be explaining it and showing you in the text. So that's pretty much how this is going to run. Now, normally after you defeat a boss, you exit the dungeon. This one has an event after you defeat the boss. You need to go a little bit deeper into the chamber, and you meet another character. Now, this character seems to know Neptune from before, which the other two haven't necessarily figured out that Neptune is a goddess, even though IF has a pretty good idea from how she found out that Neptune landed. But anyway, this character's name is R4. I don't think you learn it in this particular meeting, but she's decently strong in your first encounter with her. Right here, she's going to be a joke. But you need to remember R4. R4 is very important for the story. I'm not going to tell you how yet, even though I hope you figured it out. But if you haven't, I'm not going to tell you how, especially since you can take a hit from me. So I'm going to critical edge her instead of using Neptune. I love that animation for some strange reason. But anyway, she's very important to the story, so just don't forget about her. Now, as you can see there's something called a grand bullet. There's actually 5 different types of bullets. The bullets have to do with the elemental version of this game. The elemental magic / skill part of this game is that everything is weak to a certain element. You do have elemental defenses, but you can't really tell which enemies are of which element because the game creators kind of forgot that. So you don't really have to worry about elemental defenses. But a lot of the ways that the characters interact with each other, and by the way, I don't remember if I mentioned this before, but all the characters in this particular game are female. You do not meet a single male character that actually has a sprite. Yeah, every character in this game is female. So if you're into that, hey, this game might be for you. But anyway, that's pretty much wrapping up this episode. All Kappa is doing is she's explaining how she found Neptune. And at least to a slightly entertaining statement that comes from IF about Neptune's growing from the sky, but growing from the ground, but instead it turns out that she fell from the sky. And at this point in time, IF probably figured out who Neptune is, even though Kappa has no earthly idea, and she really freaks out when she finds out who Neptune is. But that's how it tends to be in JRPGs. There's not really too much to say at this point. I think I've explained a lot of how the game's going to work. You're going to see a lot of how the game is, even though you're not going to have to see all the different side quests and all the different side dungeons because there's not really a reason. So, this game, JRPG, this game actually does not have a world map. This is one of the last things I want to talk about. A lot of JRPGs do have a world map, and you get to decide where you want to go, but this game does not. You do get to go wherever you want to go, but it's not really a big deal. The story works in a fragmented way that it progresses depending on which land you go to, and it doesn't really change. You're always going to go through the same story either way. Anyway, that's about it for this episode. I hope to see you around for the next episode. This is Suike Novus, signing out.